Hi, welcome back to Prey versus Predator. This is an exciting episode because our good friend Sophia is actually going to lead it. Today we're going to talk about some strategies to help the healing journey for prey. Sophia has a postgraduate diploma in mindfulness-based training or teaching and learning, and she will be sharing her journey of emotional recovery through mindfulness. So this is quite exciting for us. Sophia, would you share your journey to discovering mindfulness as a healing tool in your life?
Well, if you've heard any of my past episode where I shared my story, obviously I went through a very difficult separation and still working through the divorce and coming out of an abusive relationship with a predator. And so as I discovered what was going on in my life and that my life was not really real, but it was an illusion created by a predator, and then his double life being exposed, my whole world caved in. And part of that created so much anxiety for me, stress, my nervous system was dysregulated. And really, to be honest, I was a full hot mess. And I was desperately looking for strategies to calm the fuck down because I was not coping well, and staying in your bed all day is not a good idea, nor is drinking wine every evening. So I knew I needed something that would be beneficial. And as started my journey of wellness and looking into mindfulness, and I just started listening to things on YouTube. And then from there, doing some more practices of meditation. And I realized it was having an effect so much that I heard that there was a university nearby that was offering a course on mindfulness-based teaching and learning. And I thought this would be perfect. Then I can learn how to do this and apply it to my own life so that I can heal in a way that would be long-lasting, and then hopefully have strategies that I could also help other people with.
You know, that is interesting that you're saying that, Sophia, because one of the things that popped into my mind is that a lot of the coping strategies that I used after dealing with some of the abuse stuff and getting out of course of control was not in keeping with my own value system. And so even though it was helpful, it helped me cope in some ways, at some ways it violated my value system. And what I love about what you're saying is I just imagine that mindfulness would not violate anybody's value systems. But can you explain a little bit more, what is it? What do you mean by it?
Yeah, because I think mindfulness is more than just what we would consider a guru sitting on a mat and our eyes are closed. Mindfulness actually encompasses a lot more than that. And Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is kind of one of the grandfathers of bringing mindfulness philosophy to North America, defines it as an awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So it's actually learning how to become more present in your daily life and how to train the brain to settle, to be more at peace, more at rest, knowing that we're always going to have intrusive thoughts and those things are going to come up. And when they do, we don't judge ourselves for them. The first thing you do when anyone who's ever tried to meditate for the first time, you realize we call it the monkey mind. It's dude, I've got a lot of thoughts going on in there and I can't control them. But once you learn, okay, the brain thinks, and that's okay. And then we learn from there to build that strategy and the practice and how that can settle us and settle our nervous system. Really, it's paying attention on purpose in the present moment. And so there's a Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, and I don't know if any of you have heard of him,
Did he
right?
just die?
He did. He just recently passed away, but he had some wonderful quotes and teaching. But one of the ones that stuck with me said, when you're washing the dishes, wash the dishes. And how often in our life, because we're worrying, we're thinking about the next thing, or our anxiety is overtaking us, we're never just washing the dishes. So part of mindfulness is learning how to just be in the moment, feel the warm water on your hands, notice the bubbles, notice the reflection of the light on the water, and that we can have our mind focus on what the task is at hand. And strangely enough, practicing that in a regular way helps us to be more present in our relationships and how we're becoming an active listener with another person, how we become more at rest in our daily tasks, how we connect with nature, and all of those kinds of things.
Okay, so I have this question that as I'm hearing you say this, and it's very lovely, and I'm imagining that it's a coping mechanism that if I used it would be in keeping with my value system, which is really good, and it wouldn't make me do things that I feel like are not healthy. And yet it actually scares the crap out of me sometimes, because part of the reason I like coping mechanisms, because they take me out of reality, because I'm not washing the dishes, I'm doing 8 other things. And so there's something about it that's almost frightening to me, about being present, and because I'm trying to escape from the present, if that makes sense. So can you help me? Can you help me?
So many of our strategies are avoidance.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the practice. And we're going to talk about the science in a little while, but part of what mindfulness does, as you practice it and engage it in a way that's not, say, in a high stress time, but you start to incorporate it into your life in a say like a daily 10-minute practice. That's how I started. 10 minutes in the morning. I couldn't even sit still. I had to lie down. Like I just was too twitchy and unable. But the more I learned how to practice in a time when I wasn't escalated, the more you start to train yourself so that you have access to those strategies when you're trying to avoid. There's actually a building in of the ability to handle what's called uncomfortable sensations, which you can only imagine are all the ways that we feel in our body stress.
Yeah, I'm imagining those.
Yes. The butterfly tummy, the headaches, the pressure, even if you can think of the washing of anxiety over the body and how those tingling sensations, it's part of mindfulness is learning how to sit through an uncomfortable sensation and learn to expand your capacity and your tolerance.
It just scares the crap out of me.
100%. I get it.
It sounds a little bit like I've done a lot of work around grief and supporting folks who are walking through grief. And one of the things we do is when deep feelings of grief arise, don't run from them. You sit in them, you let it wash over you. Is that sort of a little bit?
Yes, because being able to accept painful emotions rather than avoiding them, it might be only 1 minute that we can sit in the discomfort. I mean, human nature is to avoid pain. We all want to run from pain. Like nobody
I want to avoid the dishes.
Right? Definitely, because that is pain. Dishes are pain. And all of these things that we have these fears, and how our nervous system tells us, like, if I go towards this pain, I might die. It does literally feel like that when you're in a crisis mode. And that's why mindfulness builds a tolerance slowly over time. I wish I could say, oh, you do 3 sessions of mindfulness practices or meditation, and suddenly we're able to tolerate any kind of suffering or any kind of difficult emotion.
No, that actually makes sense to me, because I've never actually heard mindfulness talked about that way, because I can imagine doing, honestly, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. But I feel like that would be my tolerance because I already want to run. Even just talking about it is not super comfortable because there's something about being calm and relaxed. That's the busyness is what keeps things going. And so, but I've never actually heard somebody talk about building a tolerance for mindfulness. It's almost like, here, you should be doing this all day, every day. And then I want to run and flee. I just like, oh, that must be.
Does this have to do with the window of tolerance in your?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Sorry.
Yes, the
I'm
window
jumping
of
at
tolerance and how we expand the
in your
window of
nervous
tolerance with your nervous system. Absolutely. And so a practice that I've done with children actually is taking an ice cube and having children hold it in their hand. And we talk about paying attention to, because it doesn't feel good, ice in the hand, paying attention to the sensations in the hand, and then moving their attention away from the hand to practicing. We've practiced and learned an anchor of where do we notice our breathing the most. So I teach the children whether their anchor for breathing is either through the nostrils, through the mouth, or through the chest or belly. And so they've already been taught how to do deep breaths and pay attention to the breath. So then I'll say, okay, instead of focusing on the ice, I want you to think about your breath at your anchor. So think about the air moving through your nostrils. Think about your stomach as it expands and contracts with each breath. Pay attention to your chest and the rising and the falling of the air in your chest. And now go back to what you're noticing in your hand. And then we put the ice down and we talk about, what did you notice when you moved your attention from the ice to your breathing? Oh, I didn't feel the sensation the same. And so I talked to them and said, well, in real life, where would this be something that you could practice? And one of my students said, when I'm at the dentist, I could start thinking about wiggling my toes, or I could start thinking about my belly and my breath instead of thinking about what's happening in my mouth. And that's the aha moment, that there are times when we have these physical sensations that come with anxiety, that come with stress, that come with all the difficulties that all of us have been through in our stories, and learning how to move our attention away from that sensation to something to ground us, but not avoiding or medicating or responding to it in a way that ends up harming us later, but rather learning that window and then slowly expanding that window of tolerance and having strategies for when it becomes too much.
The other way I've heard it termed, and this is the way it works for me, is what feels good right now. So I will, if I'm thinking about something and it's just I can't get out of my head and I'm sad about something, I will look around and find something that's drawing my attention and then see it and move on. And so because I've gone through something called organic intelligence, and that's kind of the framework that they go by. And it's really useful for me. So it's like, rather than focusing on the ice, it's focusing on what does feel good in my body. Oh, the way my butt feels on the chair, the way my shoulder blades feel right now. It's just, that was kind of a version of what you're talking about. And then I was also thinking about that window of tolerance, why it's important to have. The only reason I was thinking of that, because I know somebody who's gone through a lot of painful family stuff. And this person has very little tolerance to be within that situation and be okay. So they're in this situation. And all they can think about is when it's over. When the lawyers, when this and that, and when this person leaves there and they move out and blah, blah, blah. When it's over, I will be regulated. So in the meantime, they're living in uncertainty for about 6 months, but in high amount of dysregulation. And that's why we talk about the window of tolerance, I think, because there's being able to be within uncertainty and be able to have a regulated system is really important. It's like if somebody's going through treatments for cancer or whatever, you don't know. We don't know when it will be over. So you have to be able to be regulated. And we're talking about like whatever situation you're in, but.
And there's a course called Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction that was written by John Kabat-Zinn. And that course takes you through a process to teach you exactly that, to expand your windows of tolerance, to learn how to practice paying attention to your breath, to noticing uncomfortable sensations in your body. And it walks you through journaling, extending your practices, learning how, because honestly, at the beginning of your journey with mindfulness, it's very hard to stay still for any length of time. It takes time to build.
Obviously, there are positive aspects to mindfulness when you're going through something hard. But are there other benefits that we haven't talked about?
Well, as you practice and build your practice, rumination is that thing that happens, when you get stuck in a wheel and a train of thought, the hamster wheel of the worry and rumination. And the evidence is showing, and research is showing, that it becomes helpful in how, in mindfulness, you can become an observer of your thoughts. And so there's this beautiful book. It's called My Mind is Like the Sky. And it's a children's book teaching mindfulness. And it talks about how there's all these thoughts that we have in our head. But when we put attachment to them and we start to think that they're all valid and all true, we get so overwhelmed and we get flooded with our emotions. But if we can see that my mind is like the sky and the wind is blowing and that these thoughts are going to pass by, and we become an observer of our own thoughts, they don't hold the same power over us. And so that's one of the benefits in helping become aware that you don't have to believe everything you think, right? And so
sometimes a thought is just a thought.
sometimes a thought is just a thought. There's also evidence that mindfulness helps with increased working memory and recovery of brain fog. So many times when we've come out of trauma, we have that brain fog where we've short-circuited a lot of what's going on. And so there's healing because our brain is neuroplastic and can heal and recover. And our nervous system, the same way, can recover and heal. There's also evidence that it increases your positivity and optimism and your overall sense of well-being because you're doing things that are beneficial for you, for your mental health, for your nervous system. And so that has a positive outcome throughout the day, not just in the moments that you're practicing mindfulness. There's been a lot of research in the last 2 decades, especially the last 10 years. There's connections to decreased anxiety, decreased depression, and even physical pain. And we know The Body Keeps Score, that book, and how so much of our trauma is stored within the body and can manifest as pain. And the mindfulness has been shown to help with those.
Well, I'm just
symptoms.
thinking about when you're in labor.
Yeah.
That mindfulness would be a great technique.
Absolutely. Yes. There's so many ways that mindfulness is now an expanding field in the areas of research, for sure.
Well, I'm wondering too, like what I was saying earlier about wanting to kind of always be on the go and not slow down. And what I'm hearing you say is I'm just linking it to this idea of like when I'm go, 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 as much as that's a coping mechanism because I'm busy and I'm moving and I'm feeling active and productive, there is a certain amount of stress and therefore probably cortisol coursing through my body.
Yeah.
And that would also speak to anxiety and stress and brain fog and, maybe body pains and stuff. And although at this point I don't struggle with those things, it is interesting because I'm thinking probably my body has adapted to a certain level of cortisol. So maybe when it calms down, it's a bit frightening for me because that's what it's running on. And what you're talking about is doing something that reverses that, brings that cortisol, that stress hormone down. And which is, there's zero doubt that that would be healthier because cortisol is quite toxic to the brain and the body. So that's
But there's hell in the hallway because you have to feel the sensations and not get busy and not do the things to start to regulate your nervous system. I know for me, when I was in the heat of the trauma, I could not have silence even for a second. I had to have a podcast running all night. I had YouTube going. I couldn't sleep at night. All day, I had to be busy, going, doing, watching, listening, because silence was my worst enemy, because then I had to sit in my feelings. I had to sit in the emotions that I was feeling, the thoughts that would come up, and actually thinking about what's going on in my life was unmanageable. And so it was definitely a journey of slowly building that, like you said, the window of tolerance where it's like, okay, I have 5 minutes of quiet that I can tolerate right now. And that was enough. And that's what I think is so powerful about mindfulness is it doesn't take hours on a cushion. These small bits of time as we increase it, whether you start at 3 minutes and work to, I don't think I ever made it past I know people do hours. I think 30 minutes was my maximum. I'm kind of a busy beaver. But 30 minutes, I built that tolerance up over time. And that was enough to shift how I felt all day long. And I started to notice my body is calmer. I'm not feeling all of those panic feelings all day. I'm not taking an anti-anxiety today. Like I had my emergency pills at work or whatever when I was so stressed out. And all of a sudden I saw it was gradual, but it was noticeable, the change in how I was healing my nervous system over time. And so that even people with personality disorders, like you think of borderline personality disorder, and there's a therapy called
Dialectical behavior therapy.
Thank you. Dialectical behavior therapy includes mindfulness as part of the treatment program, in how learning to be more present with your sensations, with your feelings, helps create that space to stay calm and to learn how to self-regulate your body. So we're not as reactive, because in our relationships, we don't want to react, we want to respond. And there's a great quote by Viktor Frankl. He says, between the stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And so it's learning how to take that between the stimulus, someone says something to you, I react and freak out immediately, to learn how to expand that space so you have time to process, time to catch your breath, time to self-regulate, to say, I can't talk about this right now. I need a moment to think. We don't need much time to change that reactionary behavior to a response. It just needs enough time for self-awareness, like this is a moment I could react, and I'm not going to. I'm going to respond. I need a breath. I need a break, whatever those things are. And I've practiced all of these things with my students in my classroom, and the radical difference I've seen in children's ability to self-regulate in just doing simple practices has changed my classroom dynamic, the classroom management. I've literally seen children who were very reactive by 3 months in of our practices, just turning around and seeing that they had, say, a moment where they dropped their box and their school supplies are all over the floor and they would have freaked out and lost it, to putting their hand on their chest, closing their eyes, and taking several big breaths. And when you see how quickly children can respond to that, of course, adults are the same. We all need these strategies to help us in difficult times to stay calm and regulated.
One of the things I do, and I don't know whether this is mindfulness practice or not, but when you said the stimulus and response, when there's something that I get upset about, hurt by, one of the things that I do is I will try to take a second to ask myself, what is it? Who do I want to be in this moment? And I try to go I go into my values. I go into my deepest values. And who do I want to be? What is it I want to be for somebody else? Who do I want to be for myself in this moment? Would that be a way of practicing mindfulness, or?
Again, I think what it is, it's giving, mindfulness gives you the space between the stimulus and the response so that you can choose, like in that space, you have enough wherewithal and self-awareness and being the observer of yourself to go, in this moment, who do I want to be, is actually being an observer of yourself. Instead of just reacting, now you're being an observer, you're being intentional with your response because you're regulated enough. We know that people who are dysregulated, road rage, freaking out, smashing someone with their shopping cart. We see it everywhere. Dysregulated people, reactionary behaviors, people yelling, like all the things that we see as negative behaviors. There's no space for like, who do I want to be in this moment? They're not asking that question. They're just freaking out. And so mindfulness is the ability to stay calm in a moment where you're dysregulated, to become the observer and to have enough really self-control or self-regulation to ask that question in the moment. And so when we're in crisis, when we're dysregulated, we don't really have access to that space. And so that's why practicing mindfulness as a regular part of your lifestyle helps so that when the moment comes, you have access to it. So the easiest way for me to explain things is to keep them simple because I teach these practices to kids. So I want you to imagine, I know you can't see me in the podcast world, but if you can picture your fist with your thumb on the inside, your brain is like that. And so inside that thumb represents the amygdala, which is the center for, it's the place where you will feel your sensations of emotions and reactions and whatnot. And the part on the front, your fingers that are over top of your thumb, that would be your prefrontal cortex, where we're decision making and we're thinking clearly and we're problem solving. When we get upset, we have a tendency to flip our lid. So we lose access to the prefrontal cortex and how we're making decisions, how we're regulated, how we're communicating effectively. And now we're being emotion driven instead of thought driven.
I know you can't see it, but her fingers are in the air and you just see the thumb exposed.
Yes. And so what mindfulness does is it helps us to have strategies to calm our brain down, to re-access what I call with the kids, the wise owl, so that we can make decisions that are beneficial for us and we can access good reasoning.
So now she's closed her fingers again.
I've closed it and now we're calm again. And so this is the difference between that responding and reacting. And when we flipped our lid, that's when we've heard the things like fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. We've heard those things before. If you haven't heard them, we fight in danger. We're ready to stay in conflict and fight back. We've had those conflict moments where we yell at all the things that happen and fight. Some of us are more likely to flight. I'm out of here. I'm exiting and I want out. Freeze. That's a literal flip my lid. I can't think at all, but I'm frozen and I can't respond. I can't react. I can't anything. And fawning is one of the newer ones that's been added to the dysregulated nervous system, where we comply at levels where we're still not actually accessing our prefrontal cortex and our proper reasoning, but we are now complying to whoever has scared us and caused us to react. And so again, mindfulness is a strategy to help us so that those 4 responses are not guiding or leading our lives, but rather we're able to re-access that wise owl in how we're making decisions and moving forward in relationships and life decisions. And so I'm sure everyone's thinking, oh, those are great things, but what do I do to start? What does that look like? And fortunately for us, there's so many apps now. The Calm app, I could go on and on. If you just Google balance, yes. If you just Google mindfulness apps, there's a lot of free apps that you can access. There's a lot of free things on YouTube. If you wanted to have an app that tracks you more, there's ones that you can obviously purchase.
There's podcasts too.
There's podcasts for sure on mindfulness, lots of them.
I'm thinking anybody listening to this podcast has probably been subjected to some very upsetting things that we talk about upsetting things. And if you're in this world, as you know, even hearing these things and making these connections can upset your nervous system. Can you walk through like 1 or 2 things that while we're here now we can practice? And I'll be with you for about 8 seconds. That's my window. I commit to.
You just need to stay on the horse for 8 seconds.
8 seconds.
I commit.
That's
A place that I would start, and you can, again, I could do a practice and maybe we can do it later and put it on there, but because I'd need a script. But there's something called a 3-minute breathing practice that you can Google, and it literally is 3 minutes. I have used it many times when I was at work and dysregulated, and it's a lunch break and I'm not calm, and it literally 3-minute will walk you through calming your nervous system down. So that's one place to start. Another great strategy is it's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You pause when you're escalated and scan your environment for 5 things that you can see and name them out loud. Then do 4 things that you can touch. Could be your hair, a piece of your clothing, the bottom of your shoe, a table near you, but touching 4 things. 3 things that I can hear. So you're paying attention. I hear a bird. I hear someone rustling paper, whatever those things are in your environment. 2 things that you can smell. People are always like, well, what can I smell? Smell your clothes, smell your hair. There's 2 things you can smell right there. Yeah, we won't name the other.
I lifted my armpit. There we go.
Fair enough. And 1 thing that you can taste. So, and if you don't have access to that strategy, by the time you hit number 2, you've taken your attention and you've shifted it away from the stressor to your external environment, which is very grounding. And of course, there is actual grounding too. Lying your body on the earth, bare feet on the earth is very grounding. So is being in nature. Taking a nature walk. I don't know if you've heard of EMDR therapy, but that was originally discovered from walking in outside and noticing that our eyes track back and forth in nature, taking in our environment, and how regulating that was for the nervous system.
That was my calming after I've had anxiety, was to go for walks.
Yeah.
Because I've heard that even 30 minutes of a good pace is just as like good as any other sort of like therapeutic program. So I was like, I can do that.
Yes.
I can go
Walking,
for a
being in
walk.
nature, and then being intentional when you're in nature to pay attention to your environment. Notice the trees. Instead of getting into our head and ruminating and going with a friend and talking about all our problems, trying to spend at least a part of your walk looking at the trees, noticing birds. Is there water? Is there other sounds? Can I hear the wind moving through the trees? All of these practices help ground our nervous system. And so that's a great way, anyways, to start. If you have been a victim of trauma, there's many people who guide mindfulness-based practices that are trauma-informed. So be mindful of that. Also, if you're struggling with how you're feeling about yourself, there's something called compassion practices. And so they are meditations that are guided to help you with your inside voice, to be kinder to yourself. Kristen Neff, and we'll put that link in the notes for the podcast, but she is kind of like the leading guide on compassion practices, because I think when we've been through something and we're not kind of getting it together fast as we'd like to, we can be hard on ourselves. We can be unkind to ourselves. If you've been a victim of abusive situation, that often has such an impact on our self-worth and how we relate to ourselves. So it's a really good time to invest in speaking kind things over yourself and being kind to yourself and kind to others.
I liked Tara Brach too.
Tara Brach is amazing.
Radical
Yes.
Acceptance and her podcast.
Absolutely. She does a wonderful job. There's a great podcast called 10% Happier. And I feel like that's just kind of what we're looking for. These things, these micro changes that we make to our life, it's not like this is going to fix your whole life, but I'll take 10% happier, right? I'll take those practices that help us just regulate ourselves. And it really does play into how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to others, and how when we're calm, we're better communicators. When we're calm, we're better at connecting with others, to having more compassion for others, to noticing other people's needs, and also paying attention to our own needs and becoming more self-aware of our own body, our own nervous system, and how to be kind and compassionate to ourselves. And so I just hope this summer that our listeners will just take the time for kindness towards yourself. You are worth 10 minutes. You really are. We think you don't have enough time. We actually all have the same amount of minutes in a day, and you are worth the time to invest in to heal your body from whatever trauma has happened to you.
Thank you, Sophia.
Thank you so
Have
much.
a good summer.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening, and thank you for being a part of our Prey versus Predator podcast journey. It has been great to have you as listeners, and we hope that you've gotten a lot of benefit from this, because we have. And we would love to hear from you, so please reach out. There's a lot of ways to reach us. Comments, Instagram, YouTube, find us, talk to us. We would love to hear from you. We are going to take a bit of a pause here. This is our last episode for now. We are going to have a special series that we're going to come back with, and just look out for us, because we've got something really special for you. And after that, we'll have a bit of a break, and then we're going to come back in the fall. So I hope you can rejoin us, re-listen, look for us on YouTube. We would love your comments and your contacts, so please reach out. And thanks again for being a part of the Prey versus Predator community. #PreyPower.